I can't really relate a meeting with Joseph Kimtwarasi, where really they lived like orphans. They did not know their mother or father. Through the southern part of Lake Victoria and through Tanzania and then into Kenya. Probably also passing through Masai Mara. My father served in the Second World War. I can't tell you how they met really. I've never asked him that question. Only I know he served in the army. After this 1,000 years, they were threatened by Guantune once again, and there was a acute disappearance of young people. My name is Anderson Riungu. My father is Estoni Tarisha. I was born on Thursday, 20th December, 1945. My father was born in 1916 at Mudhara Catholic Mission, and he was a mixture of European and Maasai. They were born being twin. He had a twin sister who was older than him. She was called Regina Mukomwa, and she was married to Joseph Kimtwarasi Mbiri of Mudhambe in 1934. So she moved to Mudhambe in 1934, and eventually later on, he managed to send so that my father would go and share with him living at Mudhambe, because at Tigania they lived at the Catholic Mission, where really they lived like orphans. They did not know their mother or father. The story they got is that their mother died at birth. Well, when people are to meet their halves, God is ever there. Some of these things are as God arranged, as being born is God arranged. I can't really relate a meeting with Joseph Kimtwarasi, but from what I heard from my father was that Joseph had been given a medical job to go to do for the British government at Kangeta. Probably when he moved around, he came to see Regina somewhere around the Tigania Mission, and marriage those days wasn't a very big issue. When a young man saw a girl he wanted, he usually would go along with her, or in circumstances like where my aunt didn't have a proper home, they lived as destitutes at the mission. I think really there was no way he could have gone and snatched her with the help of young people. They had to do a trek so that he went with her to Kangeta, and after a while she saw somebody and managed to send her to go to Mudhara and inform Eston that he was now at Kangeta. So Eston arranged to go and see her, and it is where now he got to see Joseph. He didn't take it very kindly, but then he took it as it was, so he returned to the mission, and from there on, Regina went to Mudhambe, and there she stayed. I don't think she was ever able to go back to Tigania ever again until sometimes in 1983, when I managed to go with her in company of her daughter, Margaret Sangu, and Felix Kare, who is her namesake. And the occasion at which we had to go was going to fetch Phyllis so that she could move to Timau to go to university in India. En route, we decided to go to Mudara so that she could be able to show us where her home was. When we reached there, the place had gotten so changed and she couldn't make out at all about the place, and we just got into the car again, and I took her to her home at Mozambique. That was it. The earliest memory I can have was when I was a small boy, very small indeed. In the evening, my father used to like music, and there was a place where young men used to dance in the forest. They had arranged a place in the forest where they would gather and dance, and after the dance, then they would go home. One evening, he wanted to go to that dance. He had an item to give them for music. He had what we call karingaringa. This karingaringa he was taking to them so that he could take for them so that it can serve as an instrument for their music as they danced, the dance which is called Mwomboko. So he took me on his shoulders and we went. He presented the item, and after a short stay, we returned back home. Because then, you see, that meeting now was not for people who are married, was for young people who are not married. So then he had no business there except giving them the karingaringa and then turning back home. That's about probably the earliest thing I can remember as I started to grow up. I have an elder brother called Sebastian Joe. I followed him. I was followed by a sister, Janice Kagendo Kerera. She was followed by Geraldine Jage, who since passed away. Then from Geraldine Jage, we had Felix Kare. Then from Felix Kare, we have got Alex Gitonga, who was lastly followed by Caroline Kaimuri. That's the number. I can't really tell because, first of all, my father served in the Second World War. I can't tell you how they met really. I've never asked him that question, but only I know he served in the army, and he went and fought from Egypt. And from Egypt, he was among the soldiers who trekked after the war from Egypt to Meru. Now, when the war ended, it appeared that the arrangement of the British Army in that area was not so organized. And again, you know, these people were taken into the army when they were absolutely illiterate. They had not gone to school. So maybe they were told things which they didn't catch, but they only knew to follow the command of marching. They used to know the command of the marching drill, but most of the English they did not know. And for him, because he cooked for the European who was in charge of them, only what he knew is that when he gave him something to cook, he would tell him, mine, you, mine, you. There was nothing else. So he would make whatever item and they would share. Again, you know, these people, it was wartime, and just young young men in localities were picked by the chiefs and transported. Only what he knew is that they were going to work. So they knew they were going for work. So they knew they are going for Kiaro. Kiaro is the name that Meru used for going for employment. And when they moved out, there were 2 camps in Kenya. There was one at Ruiru, and the other one was at Gilgil. My father went to the Gilgil one. Those that went to, my father went to Ruiru, and my uncle, who was follower of my father, Jospita Njema Njage, went to Gilgil. From Gilgil, they went to Mombasa and boarded the train to Bama. The recruits for Ruiru then went to the Middle East, so that then my father ended up in Egypt. At least the group that included my father walked back. And the person who really related that very well was Joseph Musiemi from Kawedhei, Kangundo, Machakos. I met Musiemi at Syokimau, and we had association for some time, and related to me his journey from Egypt to Kenya. And he told me that they followed the route whereby they navigated through Uganda, passing through the southern part of Lake Victoria, and through Tanzania, and then into Kenya. Probably also passing through Masai Mara, and so on and so forth. They didn't follow that route because the route that was followed crossed the Blue Nile. The migrating team from Egypt to Meru and then Lamu, that team must have moved from Port Alexandria, because that group used to want to live at the coast. And to come to Alexandria, they also had to shift from a coast in Israel, because all that they said, according to oral presentation, was that their origin was a coast. But then they had a threat from Guantune. This Guantune, at the coast in Israel, used to steal young people and take them away. When people saw that young people cannot be traced, they decided now to move. That formed a trek from wherever it was at the coast of Israel, and then they stopped in Egypt. In Egypt, they stayed for 1,000 years. After this 1,000 years, they were threatened by Guantune once again, and there was a acute disappearance of young people, and therefore a trek was arranged whereby they formed a committee comprised of a leader who was called Komenjoe, and he had 2 assistants. The 2 assistants, they included Muongai and Gaita. These are the people that arranged the trek from Egypt to Kenya, and first of all they stopped at the Blue Nile. When the trek reached the Blue Nile, these people had eaten all their animals. They had nothing. They were depending on what they could hunt around their trek route. They survived on that hunting, and there was a serious disagreement of the trekkers because they did not know whether they would cross Blue Nile or go along Blue Nile or go up Blue Nile. That became a dilemma. So that it became necessary to have to pray to God, and the prayer of that time included having to sacrifice. They had nothing to sacrifice, and Mugongai offered himself to be sacrificed. So he was slaughtered, and by reading of his intestines, it was decided that they cross the Blue Nile. But at that time, two groups disagreed. One went up Blue Nile, the other one went down Blue Nile. It is believed the group that went down Blue Nile were the people that became Baganda. These people, the Baganda, they inquired from around there, and they were told that there were people who had gone down that way. They had their animals and so on, and these people might be able to catch up with them, and they would show him the route, because on that route there would be a coast. That was the information they got, and because the group was trying to move to go to live at a coast, they decided to go that way. Then the second group, which was comprised of Tharaka, they went along the Blue Nile on that way. Then the main group crossed Blue Nile, and they went and settled in Kitale. From Kitale, it was discovered that while Bantus lived in Israel, they were actually Gentiles. So in Kitale, they had to beg accommodation from the Kalenjin, and they had to be put through the rule of circumcision. So the rule of circumcision was introduced to the Mer people in Kitale. Now, there was a group that comprised of Turkanas that did not like to be indoctrinated into circumcision, and they broke away and went to the north, and they stayed there with their habits. And these people are believed also to have comprised of the Rendile. Now this a group that stayed without forming the circumcision rituals. From Kitale also there were disagreements when, after a long while, it was decided that people would have to move from Kitale because they wanted to go to live on a coast. At that place, there was a splinter. First were the Kuria, led by Mukuria. There were a small group led by Moragori, then the Kisi. These groups went following one another like that, and they wanted to go to the coast of Lake Victoria on the eastern side. The Kuria were repulsed by Karachuonyo, and also Moragori were repulsed by Karachuonyo, and they went south to go and settle in the place that is normally in Luhya land, that is called they formed a tribe called Maraguri,